Hi, this is Adele, and in today's video, I'm going to explain and show you my step-by-step process and how I painted this small floral painting. So I'm going to go into a lot of detail, so you want to go to stay till the end. It's a little bit longer than usual, and please hit the subscribe button and the like button so you don't miss out on any of my Saturday morning art tutorials. So let's get started. I am drawing flowers on a piece of paper that I have taped onto a painting board while I'm out doing a show at Round Top, Texas Antique Show. And I'm going to show you the exact process I use to actually paint the flowers in my floral paintings. And I'm drawing them on the paper first when it's taped down to the paint table. And I always show basically I put down my composition so I have an idea of where the shapes are going to be. And it's really about putting shapes down first. And so I have balanced them around. I might add some, I might take some out later, but so far this is the place to start. Then I fill it in. Oh, and by the way, I used a China marker, a black China marker. I use that all the time to do the outline of the flowers. And now I'm filling in the dark on all the spaces, on all the flowers with raw umber. And I love raw umber and a dark basically an underpainting for anything that's lighter underneath, is going to go over it. So once I have the shapes in, then because through trial and error, I have learned to that I like the way the end result happens better when I put the stems in of the flowers first, because when you paint over them later, it looks more realistic when the flower shape can go over the stem rather than filling the stem in later. Now, because this is so small, I usually use a really big canvas, but I have a Q-tip that I'm putting it on with. So you don't need a lot of supplies, no matter where you are. You can use what you have. I just packed a whole bunch of supplies and even the palette paper and the mixing tools and the paint, all in a small little carry case. So you don't need a whole big studio or a whole bunch of supplies. So I'm just drawing those stems, and that's going to show me more about the composition. And now I'm going to go over, what I do when I go over the flowers is I use 3 or 4 different colors that are similar, but they will give a lot of depth. And in order to give texture, which is really important to me in these floral paintings, I kind of do wet on wet, so it kind of smears and blends the color in a way that's not really planned. But because I've done this several times, I know the overall effect that I want to have. And another way that I've learned how to get this texture is to twist my pen or my pen or whatever I'm using, my paintbrush, and kind of twist it and let it flow very freely. You can tell that I'm holding it from the back end of the brush. I'm not way down where the actual brush stroke is. And I go over each one of these darker ones with just a little bit of one of the colors, and then I'll come back in and add maybe a little bit of yellow, maybe a little bit of white, or several different layers of taupe. And by mixing them while they're wet, it gives a wonderful color, texture, and like mixture of paints that I couldn't get if you let it dry. You have to do it when it's wet. So sometimes I use the yellow first, sometimes I use the darker first, sometimes I use the middle or medium tone first, and then I just go back and add several of the other colors. And I like to have all the colors that I use already mixed on the canvas. And so I see them on the canvas and know that they are going to really work well together, and so I just kind of dab and twist and go. It makes it faster, it makes it more fun, and it makes it more free and kind of playful. Typically, when I do the floral paintings, I use the white as the last one because it's the highlight or where the light would shine on the flowers. So that is really the last, the last color that I use. And as you can see, when I twist it, even though, well, it's wet, even when I put the white paint in, it's going to pick up some of the other colors and blend it and just give it a wonderful, wonderful look. And I try to make sure that I leave some places where the dark underneath show, which is going to, that first raw umber that I did. In this way, you're going to get so much more depth in your painting. It's the light and the dark. And now I'm going over, again, the light over the dark stem with the Q-tip. And I leave a little bit of that dark showing, which I really like. Q-tips are wonderful. And I use them in even my really large paintings. If you want to get, it just gives you texture. If you want to get small and detailed, you can use them for that rather than a small brush. Try to use a lot of different materials while you're working because it gives different effects and not all the same. And the variety gives so much more interest. And you want to remember to stay loose. At least I'm trying to stay loose and go from flower to flower. I don't just do one first and then go to the other. I might go just one first when I'm using a really large canvas because the flower is so big. But when I'm working on this small of a painting, I work on all over the painting. And now I'm going back in to do like that I don't even know the name of it, but that part where the flower attaches onto the stem, just to give it a little bit more interest, another shape. It's all about shapes. And as it goes along and as the painting develops, I can see what's needed, what's missing, where there's an empty space, where there's variety or lack of variety. What do I want to add? What do I want to take away? What seems to be working? What do I want to change? Oh, that dark one on the left, there I go. That was too dark and too thick. So I went over it with the light. Still a little too thick, but that's all right. Now I'm going over the white. And I like to go outside of the lines, go outside of the flower shape because it just makes it more interesting. You're not filling in a shape. You're having this intuitive feel and making it really expressive. And that comes across when you're kind of go outside the lines. It still reads as floral, but it makes it a lot more interesting. Now I'm using the Q-tip again and mixing several of the colors. And I always like to add a shape with a line on the outside because it's balancing off the big shape of the flower and you see some of that negative space in between the flower and the line. So one of the last things I do is draw outside of the overall flower shape. And not on every single flower, but on a lot of them. Just a couple of them. Gives it a lot more interest. The small ones I don't do as much on because they're too small. And I love to add a lot of, mixed media. So I go back with my China marker, which is one of my favorite tools. And I just add a leaf here and there. And it just, I think, adds a lot more interest in the overall painting. And here's my standard kind of writing, which gives it another whole feel. And to me, I need to push back, or the roses, the word roses comes out too, is too stark. So I kind of push it back and put a little layer on it, a soft layer on it. Here's another leaf. I think there's going to be one more last pass. After you look at it, it's like, oh yeah, I think I need a little bit more white in there. And when I go inside with the Q-tip, you can see that there's a lot more texture that I'm adding because there's more paint underneath it. And when you go around with the Q-tip, it's kind of digging into the paint, so you have even more texture. So I just like the overall effect. It's like what I call the last 10%. You add those small little last pieces. And now the reveal. It's amazing how a painting can change and look just so crisp and finished when you pull that tape off. Look at it. The edge is beautiful. It's so surprising. It's magical. And that's when I really fall in love with it. And it's great to be able to be framed. All ready to be framed. And that's it. That's the last one I'm going to do. Here's the final piece. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next video.